this episode, we talk about a topic that sounds ordinary but quietly decides whether security controls stay strong or fall apart over time. Change and configuration management. A change is any modification to how a system works, and configuration is the set of settings that define its behavior, like which services are enabled, who can access it, and how it connects to other systems. Beginners sometimes assume security is mostly about choosing the right tools, but in real environments, many breaches and outages happen because a good tool was changed in a risky way or a safe configuration drifted into an unsafe one. Disciplined workflows are the routines that make changes predictable, reviewed, documented, and reversible when necessary. The word disciplined does not mean slow for the sake of being slow. It means careful, repeatable habits that reduce accidental mistakes and reduce the chance that attackers can exploit chaos. In payment environments, where consistent controls and evidence matter, change discipline is one of the strongest ways to keep systems trustworthy day after day. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain what change management is, why configuration drift is dangerous, and how disciplined workflows make security controls reliable instead of fragile. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. To understand why change management matters, imagine a well-organized kitchen where everything has a place and safety rules are followed. If someone randomly moves knives, leaves the stove on, or stores chemicals next to food, the kitchen becomes dangerous even if the original design was safe. Systems work the same way. The initial secure setup can be undone by unplanned changes, quick fixes, and undocumented adjustments that accumulate. In payment environments, changes might include updating a payment application, modifying firewall rules, rotating certificates, adding a new vendor connection, or adjusting database permissions. Any of these can introduce new exposure, break segmentation, weaken authentication, or disrupt logging in ways that are not obvious until something goes wrong. Beginners should notice that attackers often take advantage of change because change creates moments of confusion, temporary exceptions, and rushed decisions. A disciplined workflow reduces those moments by ensuring changes are planned and understood, so that security does not depend on perfect memory or lucky timing. Configuration management is the close cousin of change management, and it focuses on knowing what normal and approved looks like for each system. A configuration baseline is an agreed standard set of settings, like which ports are open, which services run, what authentication is required, and how logging is configured. Beginners should understand that without a baseline, you cannot tell whether a system has drifted because you have nothing to compare against. Drift happens naturally over time as patches are applied, features are enabled, troubleshooting changes are made, and staff rotate. Some drift is harmless, but some drift creates gaps, like disabling a security feature to solve a short-term problem and never turning it back on. Effective configuration management treats baselines as living standards that are updated intentionally, not as a one-time setup that is forgotten. In payment environments, configuration baselines help keep the systems that handle card data consistent, which supports both security and the ability to prove controls are in place. A disciplined change workflow usually begins with a request that clearly describes what is being changed and why. That sounds simple, but beginners should notice the difference between a vague request like open access for troubleshooting and a precise request like allow a specific support system to reach a specific server on a specific port for a defined period. Clarity forces the requester to think about scope, and it helps reviewers evaluate risk. The request should also describe the expected impact, such as which services might be affected, whether downtime is expected, and what success looks like. In a payment environment, the request should identify whether the change affects systems and scope for card data handling, because those systems require extra care. This is where disciplined workflows act like a safety checklist. They do not guarantee perfection, but they reduce the chance of obvious oversights. When requests are clear, the rest of the workflow can function smoothly because everyone is working from the same understanding. Review and approval are the next pillars. and they are about bringing additional eyes to catch mistakes and evaluate risk. A single person can miss something, especially under time pressure, but a review process creates a chance to notice unintended consequences. Review often includes technical evaluation, like whether a firewall rule is too broad, whether a permission change violates least privilege, or whether an update might break compatibility. It can also include security evaluation, like whether the change alters logging, affects segmentation, or creates new remote access pathways. Beginners should understand that approval is not meant to block progress. It is meant to confirm that the change is appropriate and that risks are understood and managed. In disciplined workflows, approvals are tied to roles, so high-risk changes require more senior or specialized review. This creates a balanced system where small, low-risk changes can move quickly while high-risk changes receive the attention they deserve. Testing is another core element, and it does not have to mean building a perfect replica of production to be valuable. At a basic level, testing means verifying that the change works as intended and does not break important security or operational requirements. Beginners should learn that testing should include security checks, not only functional checks, because a change can work while silently weakening controls. For example, a system upgrade might succeed but disable a security logging feature by default, or a configuration change might restore connectivity but also open access from unintended networks. Testing can be done in a controlled environment when available, or through careful validation steps before and after implementation. The important mindset is that you do not want production to be the first place you discover surprises. Disciplined workflows treat testing as a normal step, because surprises are more expensive and more dangerous in payment environments. Documentation is often disliked, but it is essential for disciplined change and configuration management because it creates memory that outlasts individual people. Documentation should record what changed, when it changed, who approved it, and why it was needed. It should also record the expected configuration state after the change, so future reviews can detect drift. Beginners should see that documentation supports incident response, because when something goes wrong, knowing what changed recently can point quickly to the root cause. It also supports audits and compliance, because you can demonstrate that changes were controlled and reviewed. Documentation does not need to be a novel. It needs to be precise enough to be useful. When documentation is missing, teams end up relying on oral history and guesswork, which makes environments fragile and makes recurring problems hard to solve. Rollback planning is a discipline that separates careful change management from reckless change management. A rollback plan is a defined way to return to the previous known good state if the change causes issues. Beginners should understand that rollback is not always easy, especially for database changes or complex application updates. But having a plan forces you to consider how to recover if things go wrong. Even when full rollback is not possible, a plan might include compensating actions, such as disabling a new feature, reverting a configuration file, or switching traffic to a backup component. The point is that changes should not be one-way doors unless the risk is understood and accepted. In payment environments, a failed change can cause downtime that affects transactions, and rushed recovery efforts can introduce new security weaknesses. A rollback mindset keeps teams calm and structured during problems, reducing the chance that the fix becomes worse than the change. Configuration control also includes managing secrets and sensitive settings, because changes often involve credentials, keys, certificates, and access rules. Beginners should recognize that configuration files can contain sensitive data, and that careless handling of those files can expose secrets. Disciplined workflows ensure that secrets are handled through appropriate controls, access is limited, and changes to secrets are tracked. They also ensure that changes to authentication and authorization settings are reviewed carefully, because those settings define who can access critical systems. Another risk is hard-coding sensitive information in places it does not belong, which can lead to accidental exposure through backups, logs, or version control systems. The beginner takeaway is that configuration is not only about convenience. It is about control, and control requires careful handling of sensitive elements. When workflows treat sensitive settings as special, they reduce the chance that convenience decisions create long-term security problems. Change and configuration management also play a direct role in preserving segmentation, monitoring, and vulnerability management, because those controls depend on consistent settings. A small change to a routing rule can open unintended paths between network zones, undermining segmentation. A small change to a logging configuration can reduce visibility, making monitoring less effective. A missed update can create vulnerabilities that scanning will find later, but the safest approach is preventing the drift that creates vulnerabilities in the first place. Beginners should see that disciplined workflows create a steady foundation that keeps other security controls healthy. When workflows are sloppy, every other control becomes harder because you cannot trust the environment to stay in a known state. In payment environments, trust in system state is a major part of security because unpredictable systems are easy to break and hard to defend. Another practical aspect is handling emergency changes, because incidents and outages do happen and sometimes require rapid action. Disciplined workflows do not pretend emergencies will never occur. They define a safe way to handle them. That might include a faster approval path with a limited set of authorized decision-makers, strict logging of what was done, and a requirement to review and formalize the change afterward. Beginners should understand that emergency changes are risky precisely because they happen under stress, which is when mistakes are more likely. If the emergency process is undefined, people will invent it in the moment, and that invention often leads to broad access, undocumented changes, and lingering exceptions. A disciplined emergency workflow preserves control while allowing speed, which is the balance payment environments need. It treats emergencies as special but still managed, rather than as permission to abandon discipline entirely. Measurement and continuous improvement help ensure that workflows stay effective because processes can degrade just like configurations can. Teams can track how many changes are successful, how many cause incidents, how often rollbacks are needed, and how often changes bypass the normal process. They can also track recurring sources of drift, such as systems that frequently deviate from baseline or teams that rely on manual changes without documentation. Beginners should recognize that metrics are not about blame. They are about learning where the process is failing and making it stronger. For example, if many incidents happen after patching, that might indicate poor testing or poor scheduling, not that patching is bad. Continuous improvement makes workflows realistic and sustainable, so they support security without becoming so burdensome that people avoid them. When workflows are improved over time, they become part of the organization's muscle memory. To bring this together, managing change and configuration with disciplined workflows is about keeping the environment stable, understandable, and defensible as it evolves. Change is inevitable, but uncontrolled change creates both outages and security gaps, especially in payment systems where reliability and evidence matter. Configuration baselines define what good looks like, and disciplined workflows ensure changes move the system from one known good state to another known good state with review, testing, documentation, and rollback planning. These workflows protect other security controls by preventing drift that undermines segmentation, monitoring, and vulnerability management. They also reduce attacker opportunity by limiting chaotic moments and ensuring temporary exceptions do not become permanent holes. When an organization treats change and configuration as a disciplined practice, it builds trust in its systems, making security less about heroics and more about predictable, reliable habits that keep sensitive payment environments safe.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.